Hello there, I'm Big Alias. It is so hot, so dry. I may have to take drinks from this water. And it is water. But I've also decided to wear a long sleeve t-shirt. And why is a really good question. I really don't know. But yeah, I want to talk about something. This is something I've wanted to talk about for actually quite some time. But every time it's culturally relevant and someone brings it up, I'm not on YouTube. I'm doing something else. Now, I don't care. Screw it. I'm throwing this channel in the water anyway. Who cares? Let's talk about it. Difficulty in video games. And I know this is going to be controversial because my opinion is not the same as that of the majority of the internet. And to be honest with you, my approach is just a little bit pejorative. Quite pejorative. But I still want to talk about it. I want to have this conversation. And it's always bugged me. It's always annoyed me, the conversation of difficulty in video games, because it doesn't make sense. The feedback and the response and the overall conversation just never made sense. And the reason that people give... Okay, I suppose I should make my position clear before I jump into that. Okay, so difficulty in video games, should it be there? Yes, obviously. Why wouldn't it be there? That's what kind of question is that? But that's the thing. It's frustrating because I would never understand why exactly people... I understand why people make the argument, but why you would ever not want to have accessibility in a video game, difficulty settings in a video game. I don't know why you would have this, what you would consider to be incredible experience, an amazing time with a video game, and then go, man, that was good. I hope no one else gets to have this experience. I've never understood why. It's the most gatekeepy thing in the world. There is nothing more gatekeepy than Souls-like, those difficult video games. In my opinion, that's about as gatekeepy as it gets. And there's nothing more loser-coded than just gatekeeping something that you consider to be cool. I've never understood it, and it's just dumb. And you know what? If you want my argument, I think it ultimately always comes down to the fact that, hey, why wouldn't you want more people to play a video game and to have that experience? That's the big one for me. But also, in defense of wanting difficulty settings in video games, I think it's as simple as I work, I have a full-time job, I come home from that full-time job, I leave early in the morning, I come back, in the evening, and I want to unwind, I have things to do, I have to make dinner, I have to tidy up, do the washing up, all of that stuff. I have to do all of this. The last thing I want to do is come home and have my pants pulled down by some video game, by some troll under a bridge who's half my size, but has a health bar the size of the Atlantic Ocean. I don't want to encounter that situation. So, ergo, I can say this from experience. I've tried, man. I've tried with these really difficult games with no difficulty settings. I have tried and tried and tried, and I just can't get through. Every time I come home and I'm more stressed than I was at work, and I just go I don't want to do this, man. I really don't want to do this. I don't want to play this video game. And I don't want to feel that way about video games. The way I want to feel is I want to come home, have an experience, enjoy an epic soundtrack, have a great adventure, some gorgeous visuals, some great storytelling, and just, soak all of that in a way that only gaming can really provide. And I'm not doing that when I'm playing one of these hyper-stressful, horrible games. But I get... And this is going to be where we begin to get quite pejorative. I think there's a conditioning to it. I think that video games, and whenever I tell people this, they don't believe me, but video games as of current and as of the last decade and a bit or so have been shaped around streamers and what streamers want. Basically, all of the big popular streamers will set a benchmark for the whole of gaming, and then because their fans are so avid and they love who they're watching, and I get that. And typically, streaming fans were on the younger side when this sort of, for lack of a better term, revolution began. So they were a little bit, more subject to social conditioning, and they hadn't really experienced much of anything else. So this atmosphere is created where it's the game is geared towards the streamer, and then that trickles down to the rest of the people watching the streamers who want to then experience the video games. And what better style of video game fits streamers than the things that have really taken off in recent years? These uber challenging games and these battle royales and what are they called, extraction shooters and stuff like that, because there's a lot of downtime in these games, a lot of downtime, and what can you do in that downtime? You can interact with the chat, you can talk back and forth with people, you can tell stories, have anecdotes, you have that setup. And in terms of the challenge, it gives people something to get behind and root for you. which is why I've always said that these games are better to watch than they are to play, and that's how I feel about that. And that's frustrating, because I don't watch streamers, I don't care for that stuff, and I certainly don't stream, so it doesn't matter to me. And it's also like, well, I think, I care really more about having good experiences than pleasing streamers, but that's where the sales are. But what really bugs me, what really annoys me, is the big argument that people have, the big like slam dunk, you can't get through this argument, and it bugs the ever living shit out of me, because it's one of those. It's one thing to experience an argument that doesn't really make sense. It's another thing to experience an argument that doesn't really make sense, that's built off of like pointless platitudes and things that, like, in terms of word soup make sense, but in terms of actually meaning something, don't. But it's another thing to experience both of those things, and on top of that, have it be a huge opinion that millions of people share. I think the biggest parallel between that and what we're experiencing with the gaming thing and what I'm about to talk about will be something like patriotism. Like, patriotism doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, I just like, and if you ask someone who is patriotic why they're patriotic, it's like, oh, freedom and liberty in the American way. It's like, no. No, why? Like, stop giving me words and tell me exactly why it matters and why it's important. And you can't, because there isn't a reason in terms of patriotism and in terms of this argument. And this argument that bugs me is people will say, oh, but it will affect the game design. If we add other difficulty settings, it's going to affect the game design. Well, firstly, let's push aside the fact that there's no way you could know that. You're not involved in the game design process, and most of the people who are saying this have never developed a game in their entire lives, and I understand that some developers have said that, but of course, I'll get into that later. It works marketing. But in terms of the average Joe person, there's no way you could possibly know. And secondly, and this is why it blows me away that people even say this, let alone like it's a huge argument, how about you don't do that? How about as a dev, just don't do it. Just design your game as you were going to design it anyway. You don't have... And the thing is, I think it's because the only like semi-tangible argument in this favor that like is in conjunction with this is the idea that, okay, you might create an easier game and then just make it more bullet spongy, and that's a less of a gaming experience, which I do agree would be less of a gaming experience. Bullet sponge enemies are universally annoying, and I find them annoying too. But how about instead of worrying about that, and instead of designing your game in that way, you don't? How about you just design the game in the way you were going to anyway? If you're FromSoft, just make the Souls-like game that you were going to make. Do it. Make it. And then just like for difficulty settings, lower the health of the enemies. Up the health of the person playing, increase the effectiveness of the weapons for different difficulty settings. The game is still exactly the same, and you still have exactly the same experience you were going to have, except now I can play and I can enjoy the experience. You don't have to do that. You don't have to change the design of the game. You can work, from top down. You don't have to like go, oh, well, I mean, if I'm going to add difficulty settings, I better completely change the entire game design. No, that's not how it has to work. You just mess with a few sliders. Do you ever play 2K or anything like that, where there's like endless sliders where you can just change things? Don't worry about it. Just change the settings. Doesn't change the game design. Doesn't change the game flow. Doesn't have to. And it won't. It really won't. And it's just always bugged me that people have made that reason. Why would it affect game design? It makes no sense. You can still make exactly the same game you're going to make in exactly the same way. Just mess with a few sliders. That's all you got to do. And if you can't do that, then what are you doing developing games in 2025? But yeah, I mean, like, I understand it's the challenge, and I get like wanting a challenge in a video game, but I don't think that should come in the way of accessibility. I think the big thing when it comes to people who don't want difficulty settings in games, whenever I think of this, I think back to, I think it was like 2011 or sometime like that, and I was on the train, and it was the first time I had ever heard someone have a conversation about a FromSoft game, and this guy was saying to his friend, oh, I played that game Dark Souls. This was back in 2011. He said, I played that game Dark Souls and I beat it. It wasn't even hard. I can't remember the last time I saw someone having a conversation, anytime I saw someone having a conversation about one of these games where they haven't mentioned, for the most part, it wasn't even that hard, or just in general, the difficulty. The thing about all of this, the thing about this whole conversation, is the reason that people don't want difficulty settings in their game is because they're worried that you'll assume that in order to beat the game, they use those difficulty settings. And there's a reason that, like, the conversation, and whether you believe me or you don't, subconsciously, somewhere in the back of your head, you do believe me, the conversation feels very selfish right now. It feels just like a very selfish zone. And you might think that it feels selfish from my camp. Why should you mess with my hardcore experience just because you want to be able to play the game too? Okay, sure, buddy. Yeah, the whole conversation feels so selfish because it is a bit selfish. I think the best way to sum up this whole situation is with the sentence of, I don't want difficulty because I don't want you thinking that I didn't play on the hardest difficulty. And if you take that away, then you take away people's immediate ability to say, I beat the difficult thing. I beat the hard thing. And in that sense, I do kind of get it. I get it. Like, I remember the VidMaster challenges on Halo, and it was like the greatest gaming experience of my entire life. And I love those VidMasters. And I will always say I was one VidMaster away from getting all of them and getting Recon, but it wouldn't be possible now the servers are shut. But yeah, I the only one I didn't do was the firefight one, which arguably I think was the hardest one. But yeah, I didn't do that, but I remember the VidMaster challenges and how, like, what an amazing experience that was. And it really was. It was an amazing experience, beating that challenge. There's a reason people go up on Mount Everest, and climb that. But what bugs me is that I could then go in and play on any difficulty I wanted. I could go back and play the campaign on easy, and other people could play the game. I just found this external challenge along the way, and I decided to tackle that as many people did. The difficult challenge is still there, but everyone gets a chance to play the game too. And I don't know why that factor has been just completely washed away from gaming now. It doesn't matter that, like, you can have your challenging experience, but other people get to play too. That doesn't matter to people anymore, and it annoys the hell out of me, because you could still have that challenge. You could have a game like Elden Ring where it's like, you can play this way or you can play that way, and that way is very clear. I don't know, maybe give away a challenge, give away a trophy, or something. Just something that shows that you did it on its hardest difficulty. But again, you're not going to get that, because the moment that you offer a different way to play, these people are terrified. They're terrified that your assumption will be that they took that option. And it doesn't matter if they have a way to prove that they didn't, they're still going to feel that way. And that's how they've been conditioned to feel. What I say in this video isn't going to get through to anyone, despite the fact that I pretty much unequivocally proved that it's not going to affect game design. And even if you've made that argument that it won't affect game design, we all do. In the back of our heads, we all know that adding a different difficulty setting is not going to affect game design. We know that. You know that. I know that. The game devs know that. So ultimately, towards the end of the video, to close off, why do the game devs talk about game design then? And this is the, like, transactional side of things. This is the give and take. So obviously you have the people who are, like, hungry to prove that they beat the hard challenge, and those people absolutely fall. How do I put this? I'm trying to put it in a way that's diplomatic. Okay, so game publishers will play to that hand. There's a reason that, during an Elden Ring trailer, I know that aesthetically it has to be, like, very oppressive and dark and stuff like that, but they have that shit up, and they're gonna show you the biggest, baddest boss in the most grueling section, because this is the difficult game. I remember there was a FromSoft game that was, like, twinning its promotion with, like, some sort of mega uber hot spicy wings, and, it was that cross promotion that made me just think, like, it's all just for marketing. It's all marketing. And it's so ironic that the people who, like, decry game design and free game design and, like, being unhinged and untethered and being able to make whatever you want are, perpetuating this cycle of, like, we need to make the difficult game because this is what sells and this is what people want. So there's a transaction. The people who are making the games get to market their games as the tough one. That's the USP. The streamers get to then have the challenging game that people turn up for, and then the people play that game and get to say, I beat the tough game when there's no other option to beat it, and that's the cycle. And that's why it's continuous. That's why there's so much of this, because it's kind of a bit of a bulletproof cycle, to be honest with you. In terms of sales, I actually honestly think that these games benefit more from excluding people. And that's the way it works. So it will always be this way. But personally speaking, as much as I enjoy a challenge too every now and then, I just think it would be a lot cooler if I didn't have to have that challenge all the time.
The PlayStation is only $149, and you can also get leading titles.